Welcome to the Culture and Leadership Connections podcast. If your job involves working with or influencing people's behavior, this podcast offers invaluable insights into what makes people tick. Through personal interviews that are thoughtful and surprising, we explore the full range of the roots to people smarts that can help you make or break your own career. My name is Marie Gervais, and with a PhD in culture and learning in the workplace and my own cultural journey, I bring the mysteries of human beings at work around the world to you. Through conversations with very diverse people, examining the groups they were born into and the ones they chose to belong to, my podcast takes a deep dive into why people do what they do and how they belong. Hone your skills to manage others and to be a better human being at work with the Culture and Leadership Connections podcast. And now for today's episode. Hello, Culture and Leadership Connections podcast listeners. Today, I have for you Adam Keller, who is the founder of Start a Party Rental Company. He started out as Tent All Rental and then became Start a Party Rental Company. He also has a course called startapartyrentalcompany.com where you can check it out and see what he does. Adam is a successful entrepreneur and business owner. He started his party rental company at 22 years old and with a lot of hard work and dedication grew it into a thriving business. In addition to his rental company, he has expanded into many other ventures, including a wedding venue and Airbnb. With the aim of sharing his expertise and knowledge, Adam started a YouTube channel and a TikTok channel, helping people to learn the key principles of starting a successful party rental company. So welcome, Adam. I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell the audience a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background and your family, and more about what you do more personally.
Yeah, so my name is Adam. I was born in California to a very young mother. And then shortly after, she took a motorcycle trip with my then father. And I was between them from California back to New York State. So I've lived and grown up in upstate New York my entire life. It was my mother, myself, and I have a younger sister. And, she worked very hard, went to college. And then when it's time to graduate, it's like, what are you going to do? Because I went for a history degree. Big and exciting. So you think, okay, be a teacher, but I don't really want to be around kids all day long. So I decided to start my own businesses. And my mom at the same time was leaving her work and starting her own business based on what she was doing in work. She did medical billing. So then when I was graduating, she was starting her company too.
Well, that's kind of interesting to have a parallel business journey together with your mom.
Yeah. So I say to her all the time, I started first, but she thinks she started first. So I don't know which one it is.
Or maybe it was both so close together, you couldn't really tell the difference.
Yeah.
So can you share a couple of incidents from your childhood that you think made you into the person you are today?
Yeah. So as I said before, my mother was a single mother for the majority of it. And that put me having to do a lot of stuff. Like I had to wake up before my mother went to work and snowblow or shovel. It was shoveling for a while until my grandfather bought us a snowblower. So I had to do the entire driveway in like fifth grade so that she could get to work. And then every day after school, I had to come home and start a fire. So when you're in fifth grade, you're about 10, 11. So I had to get the fire going in the wood stove because it was way cheaper to heat the house with a wood stove than to run the electric. So get off the bus in fifth grade, get in, make that fire. And then I remember one big one was she had just bought her first house that we lived in, and we had some trees taken down. But if you want to get the stumps taken out, you got to pay more. And sometimes stump removal is a lot. So I've learned as an adult. So she didn't want to pay for that. So every day I had to go out with an axe and a shovel and dig up roots and hack away at those roots until the tree was loose and we could pull it out. I remember that very vividly, hating that. But I also don't remember being told to go do it besides the first time. It was just, you go do it. So just recently I was having discussions with my girlfriend, why am I able to do what I'm able to do? I don't need to be motivated to start businesses. I don't need to wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, you're great, you can do this, and get myself motivated. I just do. And she brought up all that. And I realized how being a part of a single mother household kind of set me up for this to take care of myself and just do things that need to be done because I had to do them, if that makes sense.
It does. It was a gift in being responsible and taking care of yourself and others and paying attention to what's around you and what needs to be done in order to keep things happening in your life, right?
Right.
So although it might have felt not so great at the time, you're going, oh, I have to do this and other kids might not have to. Later on, it's like, I got to do that. And that's how I developed these skills.
Yeah. And then I also, had to watch my sister. Well, she waited on me watching my sister until I was in 7th grade. I don't think you want a 10-year-old watching a 5-year-old. So once I hit 7th grade, then I had to watch my sister. But for a while, we had babysitters.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that was also another thing that you learned too, right? Being responsible for another person.
Yeah.
Something you remember about that, taking care of your sister?
Nothing jumps out. It's just, get off the bus, make sure she's fed, which at that point was, hot dogs and spaghetti. That's what I could handle. Not spaghetti, I'm sorry. SpaghettiOs.
Oh, SpaghettiOs.
Yeah, that's all easy stuff. So whatever's easy. I don't think I had to make her do her homework, but we just did our homework before my mother got home.
You just knew you had to do what you had to do, right? And you just did it. Yeah.
So, I don't remember complaining.
No, because you were both responsible to do it, and that was just a part of your life.
Right.
What about as a teenager? What stands out for you, an incident from your teen years?
She got us, me and my friends, a job. We were working in a basement, purging medical records according to certain criteria. And that was my first job at 16. Got my friends the job too. So I had to work, that I did sports. I did good in school without trying. So that wasn't taking up too much time. And then I got this job. A lot of young people at the time weren't getting jobs. Parents bought cars, whatever, this, that. I'd have to come up with my own gas money for the car. I had to come up with my own insurance. So, I had to get a job. Fortunately, she helped because she knew a bunch of people. But me and all my friends had a job and were able to make money on our own, basically, because she kind of set it up.
Well, that's great. It sounds like she set you up to be an entrepreneur with all the things you needed.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't even realize this. Wasn't even a thought until my girlfriend, who's much more empathetic and more thoughtful, brought this up a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. She reflected on your life and helped you reflect on it as well.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, reflect.
Mm-hmm. So culture is something that we talk about a lot on this podcast, and it's basically norms between any two people. So you've got two people, they develop a way that they interact with each other. That's a culture. A family is a culture. The place where you live is a culture, the region, the neighborhood. The country, the language spoken, often culture revolves also around ethnicity, race, culture. Even if those things are not explicit, they might still be influencing you because that's what you're born into. So those are the groups that you might have been born into. And then afterwards, you adopted some, like as you got older. You mentioned sports already. So people move into other things as they get older. And then when they're adults, they also adopt other things like entrepreneurship, and being with other entrepreneurs is a way of being and thinking, and that has its own culture too. So first, tell me a little bit about the culture that you were born into and what some of those influences might have been for you.
So my mother and her two siblings were all adopted from separate families. My grandparents couldn't have children. Plus, they were really religious. So when they wanted to have children, I feel like they were going to go adopt anyways. I don't know the whole story. So I never knew what I was growing up. I remember being in elementary school and people asking, what are you? Or, everyone knew they were Italian, Irish, whatever. I didn't know anything at all. I knew my dad's side, but I always forget it. I know he was part German, part Mohican Indian, and then like a million other things. Mm-hmm. So I never grew up with a cultural ethnicity identity.
Well, you're still born in the United States.
Yeah.
So that you would have an American identity.
Yeah, I had American one. My grandparents weren't too heavy on like what they were. We had borscht because one of them was Polish. We had borscht for Thanksgiving and horseradish with beets in it. And that's from the Polish side. And my grandma was more Italian, but I think she cooked more towards my grandpa than the Italian food. I remember having galumpkies, which is like rice inside of cabbage. And pierogies. I didn't like pierogies though.
Food is a part of culture too, but it's also expectations. So, how did people expect you to behave, and what were some of the hidden rules that happened that you were expected to, or that you just understood you needed to be a part of? You mentioned that your mother was adopted, and that can also be a cultural influence as well. And also growing up in a single parent family is also a cultural influence. So can you speak to any of those?
Yes, I knew she was adopted from a real young age, but I didn't understand what that was. And I found out later that she was adopted. I think she was around 5. And my aunt was around 10 at the time. So you bring home a baby, but that's not a baby. You bring home a new person, but that's not a baby. So there was always just this like wondering, where did I come from? I didn't know anything about myself. So I didn't focus anything besides the moment and my friends around me, because I didn't really have any idea where I came from. And I also didn't know that other people thought that way, that they have an identity. I didn't know that that was a thing. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. When I was growing up, my parents were the only family that didn't have other family. You know, they were from different cultures and they married and they were the only people from their country living there. And so I always felt like everybody else seemed to have grandparents and aunts and uncles around, and I didn't get that because that wasn't my experience.
Right.
But when you said it was like you focused on your friends because that's what your experience was. So that was what made sense to you. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So from the groups that you grew into, and you chose on your own, what are some of those groups would you say influenced you?
Yeah. So in middle school and high school, we were the outcast group. In the mid-90s, this means you were wearing baggy jeans and spiking your blonde hair and listening to bands like Slipknot and Limp Bizkit and System of a Down. You definitely weren't going to Abercrombie and Fitch and Aeropostale. We were the alternative kids, the 80s version of listening to punk rock and metal. So we're dressed in black and we were the weirdos. So that gives you like a me against you kind of mentality as opposed to belonging.
For sure. But you belonged to that group.
Yeah.
And how did that group influence you?
Music wise, before I met that group, the only CD I had ever bought was a Spice Girls CD. And then I started getting into, more modern bands from, meeting those people. Video games at the time, I didn't really play video games. So, the big things, music, video games, the kind of things that are important to kids. And music, I think, is a big thing for kids. Like it almost shapes your identity for a little while.
Yeah, and that's what people remember. That's the music they remember when they're many, many years older, too. That music that they listened to when they were teens.
Right. All my friends, none of us were like little mean kids or mean adolescents. Everyone was nice, even though we were just considered the weirdos in the school. No one was mean.
So they were kind to each other.
Yeah. You watch high school movies with the outcast. The outcast never seems to be the mean one because maybe they know how it feels.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you developed some empathy.
Yeah. I struggle with empathy today.
Developed empathy for your own group, maybe.
Yeah. I have empathy for trying to see how people think, but it takes me a little while to get there because this isn't really related, but I've spent the past 15, 16 years thinking about business and nonstop, basically thinking about the business and evaluating stuff. So when people ask me what I might consider basic questions, my first response is non-empathy. It's more confusion and like, how can you not even think that? Or that's so basic. But then given a few days, I can be like, okay, they've never thought about this before. So it takes a little while for my empathy to kick in sometimes.
Well, empathy is really more about sensing how other people feel than what they think.
Okay.
So if you said you were the nice kids, then you were noticing how other people felt when they were left out and you didn't want to be that way to each other. So that would be empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you also said that it was us against them. So you developed that kind of attitude of the others were not going to accept you or they were going to be out of their way to make things difficult for you. So you just removed yourselves from them. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I still did sports with them, but most of my friends did the sports too. So there's a way of doing the sports, but having my group of friends there, and I actually convinced most of them to join these sports.
So did sports culture have any influence on you?
Not in the traditional sense where people then grow up and like love that particular sport and watch it on TV or whatever. It was more of you want to be the best at something, you put the work in. But once the sport was done, I moved on with life. I don't cling to it or watch it anymore.
It was just at the time. That's what you did.
Yeah.
So would you say that now you've really adopted into the way you think about yourself and others, business and business culture?
Yeah, 100%.
So what does business culture mean to you?
That you have a vision and you can get it done without thinking or being too fearful.
And the vision to do?
So whatever it is, you want to start a party rental company, you want to start a restaurant, you want to start a podcast. A lot of people out there just want to do these things, but they're not going to for many different factors. My friend wants to be a comedian and he currently is, but all his family hates it. So like he's got to struggle against family. Other people got to struggle against fear of being inadequate. Other people got a fear of what if they don't make it and they lose all their money and then their life's in the gutter kind of thing.
Mm.
So entrepreneurship and business culture to me is people who see something and then put steps in action and then get it done.
Yes. So what did you have to struggle with when you were starting your businesses?
Balancing life. I was 22, but like around 26, I met a girl, we started dating, we bought a house, and then you're putting all this time in the business, but then you also have your wife at home, and I had a stepson too at that time. And then you're not getting home till late. And then even when you do get home, you've got a lot of work. So my biggest struggle for many years was family versus business.
And you couldn't think of ways to make them work together?
I could think of ways, but it was kind of like fearful. I spent so much time in my business because I was afraid to give up certain tasks. I needed to be involved in everything. Only later, more recently, in the past few years, have I been giving up things, hiring people to do things for me so that I can just go home at 5 instead of going home at 8 and then spending 2 hours on the computer. A lot of entrepreneurs have trouble with that. And that's why their life-work balance isn't as great because they're afraid to give up control. But if you give up control once, the next time gets a little easier and the next time and the next time until at this point, I got a 16-year-old employee. I'm like, go take that box truck and go do this. Like I'm to the point where it's like giving up control is easy now.
Well, maybe because you know how to break things down and you also know how people learn how to do it. And maybe you also know that you can trust them once they can do it a few times, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So you give them tasks or, things to do and you see if they're trustworthy. And then at some point, you just got to be like, okay, I'm out of the picture. You go do it because you've watched them.
Something else just occurred to me when you're talking. Your mom had to believe that you were capable. She could delegate tasks to you and they'd get done.
Yeah. You look at some kids now and I would not let that kid do what I was doing in 5th grade.
Well, you've got employees and those employees, you think this person is going to have to delegate and this person is going to have to do this task because that's the job.
Right.
And although at first you might have been fearful of it because the business is always your baby, right? But still in the background, you knew what it was like to be trusted to do a task and you had it in you probably to do that with your employees. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, there's some employees who don't do as much because I know they don't have it in them. But then there's a bunch who can do anything because I've watched them, I've talked to them, we're in the truck all day together. So I know what they're capable of.
Yeah, that allows you to make decisions according to the capacity of your employees.
Right. You know what my favorite culture is?
What?
Work culture. And that's a big thing in all of society. But mine is a bunch of dudes and everyone who's ever worked for me said this is the best job they ever had. It's hard work. There's setting up tents and putting in stakes and stuff is grueling. And sometimes we're in the pouring rain or the scorching heat. But still, everyone says it's one of the best jobs they ever had because of the company culture. And that is they can make fun of me. I can make fun of them. Like construction crews or something, you just picture them being kind of like, it's all dudes, kind of vulgar and making fun of each other. That's what a tank company kind of is too. Everyone's got to be able to bust each other's balls and make fun of each other and talk about funny things because we're in the truck a lot, just driving from job to job. So that's been one of my favorite things about starting a business is developing a company culture. And I didn't even know that was like a thing until like 10 years into making the business, hearing about company culture and this and that. And I didn't realize that I was building a fun one. It just kind of happened. Then I see people talking about company culture and struggling with how to create one. And I just kind of did it. I guess everywhere just kind of does it, just determine, is it good or not? Is it a good company culture or not?
Well, you created a company culture where you felt comfortable and where other people who liked the job felt comfortable. And you became conscious of it. And you go, you know what? We have fun together. We enjoy each other's company. We're able to kid each other, joke around. You'd be able to describe your company culture.
Yeah. Then that's happened a lot with a lot of things. Like I was just doing things and like you said, I like the way you put it, then you can describe it later once you learn about it.
So would you say that's part of your personality? Personality is really 2 parts. The first part is temperament with what you're born with. And then the second part is what you build into it from your experiences and what you accept to do, to rise to the challenge to, and what you can't or decide not to accept. So what would you say your temperament, what were you born with?
It was kind of like level, not too high, not too low. You remember the TV show Pimp My Ride, where they would take someone's really junky car and turn it really nice and then bring them out. And the people would have over the top reactions like crazy. That's not me. Someone brought out that car. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Thanks. But then with that doesn't come too many lows either. Like I don't get depressed or, obviously everyone gets sad here, but like, so I don't have a big giant fluctuation when there's an accomplishment that happens. It's like, okay, cool. And within 5 minutes, it's like, all right, on to the next thing. So it's always been just kind of like level.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm sorry, what was the second part?
Yeah. So you have a level, even disposition. You don't let stuff phase you. And then the other part is like, after you've encountered and overcome difficulties in your life, what's developed?
Able to evaluate situations and make decisions quickly. So I think that's been the primary education of my life, to train myself to think fast so I don't have to sit on something. Mm-hmm. And I think you see that with a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders who you give them an idea or information, they're not coming back to you in 3 days. They're either saying yes or no, or do it this way that moment, because they have the past experience to think that way.
You maybe learned that as a child, though, too.
Maybe.
Yeah, you probably built that in as you were growing up.
Right.
I'm sure you developed other kinds of aspects to who you are once you had to take care of employees.
Right.
I don't know what some of those things would be, though.
Okay. I try to develop my employees because they're not going to work for me forever. So I try to like make them see what they're capable of. And I tell them like, I believe that you're going to be successful. And I try to give them confidence. And I don't talk to any of my employees like they're kids. Sometimes, we get a 17, 18-year-old and they're used to be talked down to or just talked from an adult perspective. I just talk to these kids like they're 40, like me. And they really appreciate that. And some of the kids that I saw potential in, they've left, they've done other things, and they are successful.
Well, because you helped them be successful.
I actually had a kid today. So he just turned 17. He started working for me when he was 15. And currently he's just got like an after school job at a mechanic shop for like 2 hours. One of the mechanics also owns a bounce house company. And he said, you should work for me. I pay $25 an hour, where I'm paying the kid 19. The truth is he doesn't actually pay $25 an hour. He pays $25 per job, which could be longer than an hour.
Yeah.
But anyways, the kid was like, I'd rather in the summer go back and work for Adam because I get the Tental-Rental university degree because I give so much information and, try to teach them things.
That's great. Yeah. He realizes that you care enough about them to educate them.
Yeah. So he could go work for some dude who's just, going to make him bust his behind, or I'm going to make him bust it too, but he's going to learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And be supported in it too.
Yeah.
And be treated like a human being with some dignity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we make fun of his mother and he makes fun of me and, but it's all, there's still dignity behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like you would be raking each other over the coals. It's just fun.
No. Yeah.
So can you think of a time when you became aware that the way you saw the world was just specific to you? Like a culture shock moment for you?
It's been recently. So I made a TikTok channel because first I joined TikTok to get business ideas. I was on YouTube. On YouTube, you can find business ideas. And I was always anti-TikTok, but I was like, let me just see what it's about. So I'm on TikTok and seeing a bunch of these weird side hustles that have to do with various online things like copying this and doing that and drop shipping. Quite frankly, they were all just kind of junky. And I could tell that the people were just making the videos to try to get clicks and views. So I'm like, all right, let me try what I know, because I know a lot. I've tried a lot of businesses. I have friends that have a lot of businesses. I go to conventions or whatever. So I know a lot. And I thought about a lot of these businesses. So I started making videos. And then the comments, like I said earlier, basic questions. And it flummoxed me. I'm like, well, how are you even asking that question? Like, skip those and get to the actual real meat. If you want to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about, skip those basic questions. And that's when I started thinking a lot. And I realized since 22, I've been training a certain way without realizing it. And other people have not. So they are entering day one of starting to think a certain way.
Would have been a basic question for you when you started out, but now it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now that I understand that, I'm able to, answer the comments a little bit better and maybe address some of those things in my video before the question arises, knowing that people just have never thought that way.
Yeah. Or they haven't had that experience yet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you're pretty good at figuring things out as you go along.
Yeah. I'd say you have to be, but then that might be my preconceived notion.
You do something You figure out what you need to do, and then you think about it and you go, oh, that's what I'm doing. And then you go, if I were explaining this to someone else, wait a minute, they don't know all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you develop a system around it.
Yeah. I mean, this interview, when I looked you up earlier, was about cultural stuff. And I'm like, okay. What's my culture? Gotta figure this out real quick before I get on a call with her.
Well, one of the cultures you have is the dude culture.
The dude culture. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, explain to me what the dude culture is.
Well, you're the one who explained it to me just a few minutes ago.
Okay, I thought you might have had something different.
I don't know. You said this is our workplace culture. We have a bunch of dudes. We tease each other and we have fun when we're working because it's hard and it's grueling, and we support each other. And it's like a bro club, a really nice bro club.
Right. Well, as I was saying to you earlier, the single mother culture, I don't think anyone considers it a culture, and no one talks about it that way. But there's a lot of people who have similar experiences, whether they're from any sort of like ethnic culture or social economic culture. There's still a lot of things that kind of go with being in a single mother household, and people don't really talk about those commonalities that much. I don't know if it's culture, but it's something to think about.
I think you're right. I think it is. Also, people that have been adopted. A culture is any group with some commonalities and some ways of understanding each other. So I think you're on the right track here with this. So what would you say some of the commonalities are for single parent families?
Whether you're in upstate New York or in the Bronx, you got to come home from school and you got to either feed yourself or take care of your younger siblings or take care of your pets. You got to make sure the house isn't destroyed when your mother comes home, and you got to help them out where you can. And then also there's the feeling left out in various, at school or whatever. Everyone around you got two parents. Maybe one of their parents is at your sporting game, and maybe yours isn't because, they're working or whatever. So there's like a lot of just everyday things that are different than a lot of people around you.
Mm-hmm. And maybe half the population, because many people have single parent families.
That's true.
It's almost 50%.
Yeah. I don't think kids talk about it with each other. So you might not know that your friend until you start going over their house, or your acquaintance at school has a single parent.
Mm-hmm. And being adopted has a culture too. And maybe there are a lot of questions around those things too. Maybe knowing what your culture is knowing what questions you feel most you want to have answered.
Right.
I'm just guessing, because it's any group with any commonalities has a culture.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't think about those when you're younger. I don't think most kids know to think. They just exist until they start finding their own culture, which is generally a friends group.
Yeah, true. So we're getting to the end of the interview. This is your soapbox moment. What would you like to promote?
So my main goal in life is to try to help people. And the best way to help people is by what I know. So that's why I started a YouTube channel teaching people about the party rental business, because when I first started, I kind of had a mentor, but a lot of people don't. I was just lucky enough he was my roommate in college, worked for party rental companies. So I started a YouTube channel for that, but then it got so inundated with like messages every single day. I'm like, all right, I need to trim this down and focus on people who are like real serious. So I started the startapartyrentalcompany.com course, and it's a 30-hour course. And that gives people everything they need to start the business. And then it's got a Facebook group to it that we meet every so often. And everyone who's signed up for the course is showing up, and we're all having fun talking about stuff and on a live Zoom meeting. So like over the past 6 months, I've gained 50 friends who I didn't know before, but are in my course. So those things, I think it's great to own something and rent it out. So you have an asset and you charge other people to use it, but not everyone can buy a house. That's the normal kind of thinking. Like, let me buy a house as an asset and rent that out. But someone might be able to buy 10 tables and 100 chairs. That's more affordable. Those are still assets. And then you can rent them out and start building and building and building. And eventually one day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I got a lot of money. I got no more worries.
That's really brilliant. It's a great way to look at assets. Buy something that you can rent out. Why not?
Yeah, but like I said, most people think only real estate, but a $200,000 house might be out of the question, but maybe you got $1,000 to get some tables and chairs.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. And they can get to your course by going to startapartyrentalcompany.com, right?
Yep.
That's great. So when you're hiring somebody and they're working with you, what brings out the best in you? What can people do that would allow you to be just your best self at work?
Not complain and work and joke around. because there's no point in complaining. Like the stuff's got to get done day in, day out. My worst experiences have been with the complainers. Like, but we're all together. We're all a team. You can't skimp on what you're doing because it's going to make us work more. And we're all trying to be friends. So I'm your friend. Don't stick a whole bunch of work on me and don't complain all day to me. So that's what I look for. Non-complainers, people willing to work and hungry to work for money and knowledge.
Beautiful. Love it. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, it was great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Culture and Leadership Connections podcast. I'm sure our listeners will really enjoy listening to your interview.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on.
Adam Keller has a smart business idea. Instead of investing in things that don't give you an immediate return, like a house or an office, he invests in things other people need to rent for special occasions. With this mindset, a business owner can start with a relatively small output of cash, starting by renting the items and build the business without requiring loans and investors. His success with this idea came from learning to fend for himself and his sister, growing up in a lone parent household, where his mother expected things to get done and the children expected to do them. From starting out and learning as he went along, Adam gained significant expertise in his work, so much so that people flocked to his course and TikTok channel to learn from him. He describes his workplace culture as a bunch of dudes who know how to get stuff done while joking and enjoying each other's company. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Culture and Leadership Connections podcast, and that you will take the time to check out Adam's links in the show notes on our Shift Workplace/podcast webpage. While you're there, take a moment to review the podcast and to click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, which allows our podcast fans to feel good about supporting the show. Thank you for listening, and may Culture and Leadership Connections continue to guide and inspire your day.